It's boring.
I can say that 2K this year was by far and away the best year I've ever been to it as far as the racing goes. And that includes dealing with the weather that they did. I think they did a killer job working around all that.
Multiple days of rain.
Yeah, definitely. But I feel like it was the most rewarding event, or the most rewarding version of that event going to, even with the oscillating schedule for those of us that were stupid enough to do roll race and drag race at the same car, and you were alternating, the car each day basically. But I also understand why they did that, and I think that worked out pretty well this year. So
I mean, they do a good job. They just need to add, I think, they just need to change the streetcar class a little bit, and unfortunately, a lot of other event organizers play to what TX2K does, so that there's parity across the country and different events, and what FL2K, what the Reunion does. World Cup kind of does their own thing.
Yep.
Jason Miller runs a really tight ship there. I don't think half of the TX2K competitors would show up and they'd be like, oh, take your turbo cover off. How long would that take you?
Like, sorry, what? Yeah, no, yeah. For us, it'd be like, we'll just go home.
Yeah, like the low-mounted Mustang turbos. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, but I mean, that's what they need to do, right? If they're trying to be legal about it.
Class racing, right. But still, I mean, that's
you kind of sign up for it.
It's a frustration point.
No, it was really good. I was impressed by that. Being a new venue, I'm a big fan of Texas Motorplex. We go there fairly often to test. So when I say fairly often, I mean like it's not like you guys can fairly often. You can
I was like, wait, isn't that like 18 hours?
Almost, 16-ish, 17 hours, something like that. So
crazy, fairly often.
Well, it's like it's a good facility. The team there, TJ, Eric, all those guys, like they do a great job putting the track together. They're very accommodating. They do these nice test sessions where we can get down there and get some good data figured out.
From the live I watched, TJ seemed like he had a really good handle on that track.
I think they did remarkably well, especially given the difficulties that 2K provides. And I say 2K because just like you get people that drive into the sand trap and then come back out and drive down the racetrack.
Temperature changes, weather changes, the rain, and that track was still working.
Yeah.
Every pass I saw.
Yeah. Yep.
Left lane may have had a weird tree issue, but I don't think anybody mentioned that.
Yeah, I ran into that in qualifying actually. So that was something that caught attention and got kind of stuck out on a little bit, but like I don't. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? I just didn't see much after the event. I was like, nobody gonna talk about how left lane's tree was going red because the rollout was weird?
Yeah.
We're gonna pretend that wasn't a thing because everybody's going red in left lane all of a sudden.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that.
But like, the track can't come out and say anything was wrong after the fact because then all of a sudden you're the guy that went red in left lane and you're like, what the?
Well, they can't, but at the same time, like, I get that they probably won't, right? But at the same time, that's like events that have made poor decisions during an event that choose to not come out later and say, hey, you know what, maybe we should have reconsidered or done that differently. I always think that's big of people when they can own it and do better. There's nothing that can be changed in hindsight. It kind of is what it is, but at least there's acknowledgement that something could have been done better or different or something to improve on the year after.
Yeah, it was a bit of a bummer to see that as a thing that took some people out.
Yeah.
Because that's a rough way to go out.
Yep.
A tree malfunction, a tree, I guess it's just a rollout issue, I think. Like the rollout beam is a little farther than the beam that you leave at. So if that beam's too close, it can trigger the red light easily.
All I know is that like I came up in left lane once, and admittedly, which if anybody saw, we ended up going out because of whatever. I screwed up, okay. But I got myself out of routine in eliminations and didn't, because that car has full functioning electronic stability control and ABS and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. I have to put it into the track mode for ESC, and then the bump function will work more aggressively. And anyways, like, so they had...
Don't tell me it bumps with one of the pre-existing steering wheel.
No, it does have a separate button in there
Okay.
for it, but you use the pre-existing launch button on the steering wheel for the
Okay.
trans brake and stuff like
I
that.
was gonna say because
So-
I feel like I could see that being like, oh, let me try this, but I just know in my brain that would not
Okay, so
work.
it would be cool, and we thought about it, right?
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is like, okay, if you actually want to have your hand over to the shifter
volume
after
button.
off and this, yeah, right. It's like at some point you get a little twisted up on that. Like, well, okay, we can just put a button. Like, it'll be okay. But
Does it go through the clock spring at least? Or?
yeah, it's actually on the dash. So that's that was something that we did before the event, and great and dandy, but it's touchy because it does have 15-inch carbon front brakes on it and stuff, and it's a low gearing car, so like all these different things, it just makes it a little touchy.
So wait, how do you drive that car then? Where's the buttons?
Okay, so
trans brake and bump.
Trans brake is right thumb, which is the
On the
factory
wheel.
launch button on the wheel.
Okay.
And then so it's into pre, cars in gear, obviously, on the brake. On the dash over here, there's a button that is for bump.
Interesting.
And that doesn't bother me because it's bump and then hand here off, and then it's over near the shifter, in case it is air shifted, but
in case it doesn't.
Yeah. Anyways, so it's a little bit of a dance with some of that going on in there. Again, it's not a race car.
Exactly.
So it's kind
That's
of
why I was kind of curious because
Yeah.
you look in my car and there's you don't see anything besides a little screen and two buttons on the dash.
Yeah. Well, and there's some of the silly things you run into, the stereo, obviously, if that's been on in the background and I've heard it but not realized it, so the car's running, but then there's music and you're like, oh man, turn the volume down, stuff like that, and just kind of some silly things. But
Well, even with how much sound deadening there is in that car is probably weird too, because when I'm racing, I listen for the other car. I listen to when he starts to get up on his brake. You probably can't hear
very,
as well.
very difficult.
Because that's how it's designed.
Yeah, that car's pretty loud to begin with in the car, and then it's actually a pretty sealed up cabin, so it's really pretty hard to hear anybody else.
Just the nature of racing. I mean, every chassis we deal with our own things, but that seems like some interesting struggles you wouldn't think about.
Yep, it's different, but where I was going with that is so left lane, whatever, in eliminations, we got knocked out because we had to stop. They want to know if we want to do another burnout. Didn't want to do another burnout. Well, when I go through the burnout process is when I do the ESC button. So then didn't do that, and then it didn't want to bump in, and I tried to manually get it in and went through and whatever. So it was just a, bunch of tomfoolery, which is entirely my fault. Anyways, left lane in qualifying, I walked up onto pre-stage and the full stage flickered really soon in, and I went, oh man, I'm right there. I better wait right here. And then it felt like it didn't even move on the bump, and all of a sudden I was in. I was like, okay, I guess I'm in. Here we are. Well, I didn't think until after the fact of okay, that wasn't right. That didn't play out appropriately. So whatever that means, that's all I knew.
It's weird. I know Jim and Brett, they strategically made sure they always got lane choice. So they never ended up in left lane.
Sure, just in case.
On any other passes there. We weren't risking that.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
I was it's pretty smart thinking. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
That's smart thinking though, because I was I wouldn't even have occurred to me they didn't have to run out every pass probably.
No.
So to know that you were running out every pass, know that you're putting that extra wear and tear on your car.
Yep. Man, 8 qualifying rounds.
Yeah. Some people I saw were complaining about that. They were like, I had to run 8 qualifying. You didn't have to.
Yeah, he sure didn't. They were the same people that were telling me it was unfair that Brett was in the same class as us.
Just because they were there.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Jim have talked about this too. If you need more than 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, we sat out after round 4. We didn't do anymore.
Yeah.
Now, partly because we had a whole another race to do with the car, with the roll race stuff, and didn't want to just keep, going back and forth and whatnot, which is just
I can't believe they got through that many, though. That was smoothly ran, and there was oil downs, there was crashes, and somehow they were kept pushing through.
That's what I'm saying. From a racer perspective, it was I not trying to exaggerate, but I think by far and away the best 2K that we've participated in.
Yeah.
So-
and then you did the roll racing. So
Yeah.
what's your
favorite?
You have an interesting take on it from, you obviously you live in a different world than me with the cars and the people and your customers.
Well, yeah.
Than
Sure.
I'm more of a just like, drag race, don't really care about the fit and finish of the car, I guess, and I don't have customers. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything.
Right, yeah.
So you have a different opinion of it than I do.
Yeah, I suppose. I think probably the best way, I can't remember what I made mention in somebody's conversation. Actually, it might have been a post by Joel Granis about the roll race stuff. And I get it. I get it. It's not everybody's cup of tea. And I'm telling you, I don't like it. I think it's necessary for our buyer's market because our market looks at that and makes buying decisions based off of it.
Yep.
I don't think that's a good idea. Do I have to say that really close? I don't think it's a good idea. Which is maybe not what I should be saying considering we are the fastest Vipers out there in the roll race stuff for a while now.
Yeah, what'd you run?
So speed-wise, at 2K, and this is where it gets confusing, right? But anyways, at this event, we went 225.9 or something in the roll race, which was
who knows how many feet.
Yeah, about 1,500 or so. And that was the second highest mile per hour of anybody in eliminations. Billy's GTR from T1 went 229 in elims. It went 236 in qualifying. And then, and this is where I can see where drag racers get frustrated with it because there's so many non-definable aspects. And so we have to sit here and justify it. It's like bench racing times 100, in qualifying we went this fast, but in eliminations we did this and then this and and you don't get incremental data on the track from what you're doing. So from a tuner's perspective, it's kind of challenging. You're looking at it and you need to really understand it is a drag race. It is a drag race. It's first to the finish.
Yeah.
Mile per hour doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've seen 20 mile an hour difference from winner to loser.
We lost in semis to Marcelo's GTR because that thing, it's a big engine. It's a billet engine. I think it's a 4.1 or 4.3. I don't know. Yeah. It's a big engine, billet block, twin 68 car on spray. It's gnarly down low, right? Comes out with authority. So it's effectively that race going into it. I was looking at it as if it was Brett ding in the other lane of hey, this is a car over here that can and probably will go a 1.060 and we go 1 teens. So I need to do something to make up for that somewhere on the track, right? It's no different than that. It's just you're starting from a rolling position. And that is what's interesting. It's challenging as a calibrator, as a chassis tuner, as all of those different things that you're working on with the car.
As a driver, it's weird.
There's that. There's a lot going on up there.
You have to be pacing the guy or put a good pace. You can't be going too fast.
Right.
It's a weird, almost like a dance with the other guy.
Very much so.
Drag racing, you can just do your own thing, and it doesn't matter who's next to you. It doesn't matter what the other lane does. But you have to kind of balance with the other guy in roll racing,
you do.
Which is weird.
You do. And you're banking on whether or not they're going to play fair or not. And that is a whole nother dynamic into this because in drag racing, if they don't play fair and they go red, they go red. That's it.
Yeah.
It's over. There is no version of that here. And if there is a version of that, they get to do it again. They're hey guys, that didn't go well. Go ahead and
mulligan.
Come on back again. Let's do it. Oh, okay. So it's in
2 or 3 times sometimes.
Yeah. So in some ways it's incentivized to not be a good guy. And I don't like that part of it. So there's that. But I guess what I do want to impress upon people is that there's for whatever reason, there's this thought where people are roll racers only do it because they can't make the car work from a dig. Well, hey, we got a 4,000 pound car, goes 670s. And so it's kind of cool from a dig. And we roll race with it. And yes, we do it because it's good for the company. The owner of the car wants us to do it with it. It showcases what you're capable of doing. It's just a different version of a drag race. And yes, it's meant to replicate, highway street racing type stuff or whatever. And it's a good attempt at that. But anyways, I guess if there's a honed in point of it, it's that like it's not as simple as what I think some people think it is. Now, you have a 800 wheel Whipple car of some sort. I don't know. Yeah, man, you're right. Like stab it and go. That's that. Okay, fine. If you're trying to make a 3,000 plus horsepower car react without a trans brake leave or without a clutch dump or whatever, like that's very different chassis dynamic, trying to get that power to apply from a rolling movement where you don't have that that energy transfer in from the trans brake release or clutch or any of that type
especially your
stuff.
rear wheel drive deal.
Big deal there, right? Yeah.
That's a very big Achilles heel to roll racing in a lot of, from everything I always see, it's always all-wheel drive cars that kind of podium.
Absolutely.
For the most part, because you don't really do that burnout. There's not that initial bite of that first 60 feet.
Correct.
That you're
To
kind of
set the
counting
car.
on.
Yeah, right.
Once you plant the car in that first 60 feet, you kind of have it steady.
Right.
But in a roll race,
you don't get that.
Yeah, it's a weird deal on rear-wheel drive.
Yep.
And rolling anti-lag is a tough thing to get right because you only have maybe 40 feet to have it engaged and disengage.
Or do you have a lot of distance because they don't give the green light for a while, but now you got to keep pace with the other guy over there. So do you disengage and do you get back on it, or do you set the rolling anti-lag so you can drive through it a little bit? So I guess there's just a lot more aspects to it than what I think people are maybe necessarily giving credit to it. I'm not saying everybody needs to think it's the coolest thing. I'm not saying everybody needs to, root it along, like none of that.
Show it the respect it deserves.
It's not even. I drive a Dodge Stratus.
Yeah.
No, it's just different. And I can't. It's kind of like the class choosing. Like I can't complain about it too much because we choose to do it. Like we could choose to not do it, and then that would be that. But it is still something that we try to showcase that we're capable of that one car doing both types of racing and being fairly successful at both at that point. So it's.
I would say I personally don't think it needs to be a drag race. I know that sounds weird, but it could just be like a half-mile event. You had the fastest time. Congrats. You started at, check what speed they started at. Who had the fastest time? That's really all that it's kind of going for, because that's the main gist of it, like a half mile.
Well,
congrats. Okay. Here's your card. You went 250,
Theoretically, no, of course, you would probably never, ever, ever disobey local traffic laws of any sorts, right? But hypothetically, if you had ever been involved in a contest of speed in a highway type scenario, who wins? Like when you do that, is it the guy that went the fastest, or is it the guy who he's out farther, I'm not catching him, that's that. So is that ET or is that speed?
Yeah, that would just be ET. Speed doesn't really matter because you could spin a bunch and suddenly have, 20 mile an hour on the guy, but...
So that's all I'm saying. That's why I'm like,
sure.
It is different than because we participate in half mile stuff. I don't love it. It's thrilling when you do it a couple of times. I think the speeds are absurdly fast for what the cars are. But we have customers that do it. And our cars are pretty fast at it. Like that's great. But
on like a dusty, dirty airfield that a plane just landed on.
So we've got a customer that just participated in the past two shift sector events out in California, and then he did one in Arizona also, all dust-covered surfaces. It's a almost 2,600 wheel horsepower car that has thousands of pounds of aerodynamic downforce on it down track, and at 160 to 190 miles an hour, it's doing massive torque reductions trying to keep the car in check down track. Like, I mean, he thinks it's awesome. He thinks it's thrilling and great and
Yeah.
awesome. And I go, okay, man.
So so even at the end of the half mile, all the power is not even in yet.
Sometimes not, depending on the surface, right? So again, for guys that are, it's funny. Like I almost think there's like people are gonna hate me after this. I almost feel like there's like a stereotype thing. It's like people that are like hardcore no prep 8th mile guys are usually guys who are like, roll racing's the dumbest thing I've ever seen, but those guys are all about power management on surface, right? Well, that's what the roll race stuff or the half mile stuff is. Like it's very much so power management tuning. And like, yes, you have to have a lot of power at the end to get to the speeds that people want to see, but you have to be able to harness it and utilize it really no different than no prep stuff. Like it is no prep stuff.
You have to use that boost controller correctly. And I've seen it a little bit with the R8s and the Huracans on stock ECU where the boost controller is not quite good enough to use the boost right. And the way that they add it in, you can see it unsettles the car so much as it goes up a gear and more boost, up a gear, more boost.
Sure.
Instead of like, with the Motec where it's like
a true boost by gear.
Nice casual added in.
Yeah.
And I've seen actually one R8 wreck because of it. It just like, you could hear it as soon as it hit third gear, it was just like tons of power.
All of it.
And I was like, third gear on the drag strip is a scary place to just suddenly add all your power. Like you're pretty far down there where the prep's not quite as good.
Another good point. Back to the roll race stuff, right? So like you're not in this box of glue that like you don't know where the start line is. You don't get to walk the track and be like, boy, right here and right here, this is real good. We got to line up right there, and that's where we're going to make the hit, and we're going to do our burnout through there. We're going to back up on that. Like you don't get to do any of that.
Yeah, nobody lines you up.
You don't know where you get the green light. It's in anywhere of, I think it's 300 feet of distance that you could start anywhere in that area.
Yeah, so the green light kicks on whenever they see you two kind of
theoretically
close enough within 300 feet, so you could be on that. You could be way in on the beginning. You could be way at the end of it. Do you think the track is the same at those places? Very different.
Probably
Very
not.
Different track.
Right? So that's just, it's more of those things that I think
no burnout.
Right. I think it's more
weird.
It's more of those things that I think people just don't necessarily understand unless they've been a part of it or haven't been a part of it at a car of that caliber at that point. Because now you got to look at that. Like, I mean, we're one of them where people showing up with a legitimate 6-second car to go roll racing, and we didn't win.
Yeah. I personally have won a roll race event.
So you're the hero of us all. See?
At Streetcar Takeover, they were making fun of me. They're like, oh, roll race and all this stuff. And they were like, you just, you couldn't do it. So I entered the Camaro, won 181. I won the roll race event.
There you go.
And I was like, look.
Where's the trophy?
I know. I need to add it in there.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, see,
all-time
guys?
roll racing champion. Just put a nice label over it. Yeah.
But it gives me credibility because I can do it.
Yep.
And I can make fun of it,
And you can say you tried it and you experienced it, and you may say, you know what, I never need to do that again.
And it was weird to do because they were like, do you have rolling anti-lag? I was like, no, I got a foot brake. And I'll just roll in with it.
I promise you I'm not going to trans brake it from a roll. I don't think we're going to try that.
I was just on my foot brake kind of trying to do it because, you could have a 2J on my car and I could have a different button do something. But
sure.
I was not prepared, so
right.
Foot braked it and hope the nitrous did enough.
Good for you. You did it.
Did.
Yeah.
It was not bad. I will say at the end of every pass, I didn't know if I won.
Yeah.
I looked around. I was like, was it me? Was it them?
Yeah. Was it good?
Like, I know I got to the end first, I think. Like, was it green light? Like, do we have to rerun it? I never knew if we were going to rerun it.
Yeah. Yep.
That was weird. I was like, that always confused me.
That's why you need a stereo in your car so you can listen to the announcer.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I know, exactly. That would make it actually pretty nice. I didn't even think about you could do that.
Yeah. I can say I did that at 2K, like listening to like other people making runs, because then if you're in the car, you're stuck there, So then I could at least listen to the broadcast of what's happening.
I've heard stereo rules before where people are like, you got to have a stereo in your car.
Oh, really?
Part of the rules.
Oh, okay.
I've heard it before at like no prep stuff.
Okay.
Where they try to make it more street friendly.
Okay.
But,
fair.
Then a Fox body still weighs 2,500 pounds with everything in it.
Hey. I'm just jealous when I talk about that stuff. That's all.
Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Bogetti Clips YouTube channel. For the full podcast, check us out on Bogetti Studios YouTube and all your audio platforms. Also, hit that subscribe button to not miss out on any of the new Bogetti clips coming up.